Everybody, so I'm back again to give some commentary about the killing of Nicole Good in broad daylight. But I'm going to talk about this from a different angle because I want to talk about the public's role in this killing. Because this did not happen in a vacuum. Now, my book talks about state violence, but before I even get to chapter 8, I'm going to sort of give you a preview of what chapter 8 is about. Because state violence does not occur without the public's authorization. And even right now, there are so many commentators on YouTube and social media basically blaming her for her own killing because she should have complied. She should have used a different forum for pushing back against the system, right? She should have gone to court, or she should have written her elected officials to speak on her behalf. She's not allowed to speak on her behalf. She's not allowed to take direct action. And so they're gaslighting all of us. They're gaslighting because they know that none of these approaches work. But no matter what she did, it would have been her fault. Um, the reason why they're doing this is because they support state violence. This is what I want you guys to understand. I haven't gotten to chapter 8 yet, but what I've said before is that the public is the master state. You may not support every action that the state does, but you support the system itself. You legitimize it. You vote. You participate in juries, right? So maybe you don't like Donald Trump, right? It doesn't matter because if Trump would have lost and it would have been somebody else, that other Kamala Harris or whoever it was would have been carrying out state violence. State violence is being carried out on a daily basis, perpetual basis at the state and local level, but nobody sees it. I'm getting pushback for even calling it violence. I'm not sure what the reason why is because people don't want to take accountability for their role in it. They want to act like they live in a civilized society. We're nonviolent. They don't want to acknowledge that they are violent. If you support laws, if you support regulations, if you support a police state, then you're violent. It doesn't matter, like because basically you're being cowards and you're authorizing the violence while hiding your hands, right? You're saying, I'm not violent, I didn't pull the trigger, but you absolutely support the system which pulled the trigger. You gave the state its monopoly on the use of physical force that the state can deploy violence against you, but you're not allowed to defend yourself, and you're not doing shit about it. You're not doing shit about it, and yet you think that it is justified to put people in the system. How dare you? How dare you justify procreation for any cause, for anything that you think is good for animal liberation, for the betterment of the Black community, for whatever you think is it overrides an individual's non-existence, that you're going to say you should exist to serve my cause, um, and then we're not going to protect you even if you do serve your cause. And I'm going to talk to you about the gaslighting because there is no way that she could have won, right? In a democratic society, there is no distinction between the public and the master state. The master state does not act independent of the public. And what I talk about in chapter 2 is that collective ownership is still ownership. So the reason that he was able to take her life is because she did not own her life in the first place. Um, there's a lot that I have here, but I'm trying not to be repetitive and talk about stuff that I've already said. Um, Now, what I do talk about in chapter 8 is the natural slave. And the natural slave, this is a concept that was posited by Aristotle. Um, and in a democratic society, we're basically controlled by the natural slaves because they do hold the power to legitimize state violence. but they don't actually understand. They don't have the deliberative capacity to understand the violence or the power that they hold. They're deploying the violence, but then when the violence actually manifests, they're saying, "Oh, that didn't have anything to do with me. I didn't do it." Right? Um, they support it. They don't have the cognitive capacity to evaluate right from wrong. They just look at, well, it's the state, so everything that the state does must be legitimate. And so even when you see it right in front of your eyes that the master state shot somebody in cold blood, they can't actually evaluate that with any sort of independent moral agency, right, or a moral lens. Like it's because the master state is always right no matter what. She should have complied. It's her fault. They're completely biased. They have an authority bias because that ICE agent was in a position of authority. That means that anything that he did was right. Now, I don't know the whole natural slave thing. When you read it in my book, it's prescriptive. It's not descriptive. I'm not sure what came first, the chicken or the egg. I'm not sure if it's just through indoctrination that people became natural slaves, but they don't think independently. They don't have the capacity to think independently. There's a very small minority who can actually see things for what they actually are. Most people don't have that ability to evaluate it. And what makes it so unfortunate is that those are the people who are voting. Those are the people deploying the violence, and they don't understand anything about this. So, and again, I'm gonna I'm going to be talking about some logical fallacies. I'm not going to do it right now, but it's really an appeal to necessity because they're saying it's for the greater good, right? If we didn't have, by the way, for those who are on my Life Abolition channel, I am an anarchist, which if you're new to the channel, maybe you didn't pick that up. I don't support democracy. I don't support state violence, but a lot of people will defend statism because it's an appeal to necessity that basically they're afraid of the state of nature. They're afraid of what the human they're afraid of the human proclivities, like what will we do in our natural state without violence preventing us from exercising our natural tendencies, right? They're afraid of the human nature, and so therefore they need state violence to push you away from your nature, which Rousseau already explained that humans are not inherently violent. That in a state of nature, humans actually cooperate. They it's not like purely nonviolent, but basically there's a fight between there's a fight to determine who's dominant, which is the same thing that animals do, by the way. There's a fight to determine who is dominant, and then once someone determines themselves to be dominant, then there's a long period of peace. It's not perpetual violence that you get under statism. And that's why Rousseau, well, actually, it was Charles Dickens who actually coined the term noble savage. Um, Rousseau just basically referred to the savage as being noble because those who are primitive have virtues that those who are civilized don't seem to have. An understanding of right and wrong. I've talked about Rousseau before, the discourse of inequalities. I'm not really going to go into detail about that, but basically, civilization causes you to be degenerate because you don't actually learn the difference between right and wrong in an organic manner. The state tells you what is right and wrong, and so basically you do whatever you're able to get away with because your only moral compass is whatever the state decides is legal. Now, the public lacks deliberative capacity. They can't think, right? They're not going to acknowledge their agency. They're wielding coercive power. And by the way, voting is an act of violence, which I'm not going to be voting in the future. I did vote in that last election. That was a mistake because I was advocating for the right to maid, and I thought maybe I can get a candidate who would actually articulate and actually give me a voice, but clearly that didn't happen. So at this point, I'm for direct action. I'm for operating outside of the system. I'm not going to try to use the system because the system can't be reformed. The system doesn't give a shit about any of us. Um, this is the tragedy of democracy. I talk about how the masters, like, well, I already talked about it in chapter, was that chapter 2? No. Anyway, those who participate in democracy they're the master state. But it's the whole concept of the sovereign citizen that it's a duality where you're both the sovereign and the citizen. At least that's according to Rousseau. But you're a complete slave and you're only a fractional master. So your power is diffused among however what 300 million in the United States or whatever the population is in your state and local government, but you're a complete master. A complete slave where you're subjected to complete submission to authority. You don't have, like in that video where she got shot, she did not have the right to flee. Um, because what they're going to say is you should have just complied. You should have just allowed him to inflict his violence on you, and then you should have taken it up with the courts. And they know good and damn well that the courts ain't going to do shit. They know good and damn well that he's protected with qualified immunity, which is effectively absolute immunity, that he's going to get away with it. So whatever violence he inflicted on her, he was going to get away with it. So she only had two choices, was to sit there and allow him to inflict his violence on her. Maybe you can say that the violence would have been less if she stayed, because maybe he just would have yanked her out of her car and put her in handcuffs and threw her in a fucking cage. Or she could have taken her chances and tried to flee. I get maybe you're saying she chose the lesser of two evils. The lesser evil would have been for her to stay and allow him to inflict his violence, or try to flee and then take her chances that maybe she could get away. Now, nobody thinks that a law enforcement officer is going to shoot you in cold blood in broad daylight. There was no way that she could have seen that. And I'm going to get into, well, I guess I'll get into white supremacy because unfortunately she was set up for failure. Um, she was set up for failure because what they tell you is, oh, the system works for you, right? So basically, her way of thinking was that she was protected by the system represented her, and she could have used herself as a human shield, right? Because this is what they say. They talk about how the system benefited you, so therefore you have a duty to step out and fix whatever. This is why I talk about how you don't have duties, by the way. I talk about in chapter 11, which I talked about earlier, that you don't have duties because they're going to set you up for this shit. They're going to say, you have a duty to do this, you have a duty to do that. And then when you fall for the okie doke and then you carry out these supposed arbitrary duties that they made up, then this is the result. And then they're going to blame you for it. You know what they're saying on social media? They're basically blaming her for it. They're saying that this is proof of her white privilege, because if she didn't believe that she was privileged, then she wouldn't have done what she was doing. You know how fucking retarded that is? That makes no fucking sense. So basically, she's wrong no matter what. She's wrong if she didn't do anything, and she's wrong if she does something. So why would a white person ever have any incentive to do anything? Because you're going to basically use the violence that is inflicted upon them as proof of their white privilege. But then they're also going to be blamed for not doing anything. So this is so fucking retarded. It makes no fucking sense. This is not a chicken coming home to roost moment. She was not a part of the system. And again, I've already said this before. I really want to reiterate that the master state has nothing to do with white supremacy. White supremacy is a tool used by the master state. And a lot of you have fallen for the okie doke that you think that the master state is white supremacy. It is not. I've talked about Beacon's Rebellion on my anarchist channel. how they constructed white supremacy. Like white was a complete construct. Um, because the Irish and the blacks, the black indigenous, the white indentured servants and the black slaves were basically going to rise up to overthrow the system, and then they constructed this whole racial distinction. The Irish got treated slightly better than the blacks, but it was basically to prevent them from joining together to overthrow the system. So you keep falling for this okie doke bullshit and thinking that um, what this is you because George Floyd got this is what they're doing. They're doing this whole whataboutism. What about George Floyd? What about this person? What about I'm it is what it is. It would have been nice if people had woken up at the time of George Floyd or whatever. Um, George Floyd obviously was not the perfect victim, but nobody's a perfect victim. The point is that they're waking up now, right? Don't focus on what happened to this black person or that person over there. The point is that they're waking up now. Now they're seeing that the state does not give a fuck about them either. Now they're seeing that this shit can happen to them too. This can happen to their children. This can happen to their daughters. And now they're finally, well, I would say that they're starting to wake up, but I think a lot of them are still they're just fucking hopeless. But I would say there's a small segment that is starting to wake up that this could happen to any of us. I think it's absolutely disgusting. I think it's cowardly to say that it was her fault, to say you play stupid games, you get stupid prizes. I think anyone who says that you're a coward, you don't want to buck up to the system. And apparently she had bigger balls than a lot of you. A lot of you wouldn't have done that. Clearly, she was not a part of the master state because she was going against the master state. So this is not about her. This is not about her. This is about the system. The system is deploying wanton violence against nonviolent human beings, and it needs to be stopped. So this is an opportunity to expose what the system is doing. The system's violence, the master state violence, is illegitimate. And if it took it happening to her for people to finally see what is actually going on, then so be it. I mean, I wish it didn't happen to her, but use this as an opportunity to learn from it, to prevent it from happening from other people. This should not happen. This should not be the way that we live. This is bullshit, right? So the myopic thing of this happened to that other person, no, it's the system. Stop focusing on the individuals. Focus on the system. The violence itself is illegitimate. And for this, I have some black content creators. I have Phil the Advisor talking about how black people, this slave bullshit. We would never would have done that. She should have just fucking obeyed. We're not going to get anywhere with this fucking slave shit. You're the fucking, see, this is the whole conundrum, because they're talking about this whole sovereign citizen duality. The citizens are supposed to be sovereign, but you can't exercise that sovereignty unless it's through the state. So you can only channel your grievances through the state, to file a lawsuit, to write your elected officials, to what? Basically everything they're telling you to do, they know that it's not going to be effective. You're not supposed to take direct action. You're not supposed to put your car in the middle of the road to prevent them from deploying violence. And they don't even see it as violence. They don't even want me to call it violence, right? So because it doesn't matter what she fucking did. She put her car in the middle of the road. She was not the aggressor. He was the aggressor, right? And even their justification when they talk about his previous incident of somebody pulling off. No, that motherfucker busted somebody's window and was about to yank them out their fucking car, and the person drove away in self-defense. But they don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about his violence, because this is moral laundering, right? That's what the whole the courts are basically there to have these procedural and technical dismissals, so that you you funnel your grievances into the legal system thinking that you're going to get some type of justice. You're not going to get any justice. They talk about all the procedure, about how you didn't do everything right. They talk about the immunities and all this bullshit. You're going to get a summary judgment. What you're never going to see in any of these judicial opinions is the actual violence. That the fact that she was nonviolent, she did not do anything, she did not harm anyone. He was the aggressor. They surrounded her vehicle. She tried to flee, and as a result of her trying to resist, can we go back a little bit before this, because they're saying that she was beeping her horn. So the fuck what? That still does not make her the aggressor. They came there with their fucking guns to take over their town and to impose violence against nonviolent actors. So they were the aggressors all the way around. I mean, why do I have to state the fucking obvious? How come you saw the fucking video, but you have been so indoctrinated you can't even see what the fuck just happened? And she was trying to stand in the way of that violence, and now you're going to blame her for that shit. This is bullshit. And they would not have any incentive to ever stand in the way of state violence if this is the reaction that you're going to have. Um, wh- Let me see if I have any comments. It's the opposite. I'm trying to scroll down. It's the plebeians. You better remember you're living under tyranny. Stop acting too free. It's pissing us off. Well, that's the whole thing, that you thought you were free in the first place. Like, I've been trying to tell you. I think the terminology that I use in my book is accurate. You are a fucking slave. And so you need to acknowledge that. And you need to acknowledge that when you procreate, you're creating a fucking slave for the system. So whatever happens, those are the natural consequences of your decision to put them in the system. There's nothing you can do to protect them. The system has a monopoly on violence. It doesn't give a shit about right and wrong. It will kill you whenever it pleases to do so, and it ain't shit you can do about it. Right, right. They are trigger happy, but for whatever reason, people think that it only happens to a certain segment of the population, and this is really making it clear. The mask has been removed. It doesn't apply to just certain people. It applies to everybody. No, they're not waking up. They're not. They're basically being fed a false narrative. You're not supposed to believe your lying eyes. They're trying to say that she was trying to run him over, and that you watch the fucking video that she was turning in the opposite way, and moreover, she had already passed them when they shot her. So clearly she was not trying to run them over. But the public is fucking stupid. They're fucking retarded. You can tell them anything. You can tell them the fucking sky is green, they'll fucking believe it. Right, right. That's exactly it. She was a fucking traitor. So this is the whole thing, that you can't win either way. If you fight against the system, then you're a traitor. But if you don't do anything, then basically you support white supremacy. So and the people, and I'm calling out specifically the black content creators who are saying this shit, like the field advisors of the world who's saying this bullshit. You're I don't okay, I don't really want to talk about white supremacy, but I guess I'll talk about it tangentially right now. That you're agents of white supremacy even though you're black. Like, this, because you're white doesn't make you automatically an agent of white supremacy. What you're Everything that you fucking said was fucking retarded. You're the one who's defending white supremacy. You're the one who's telling us to be slaves and just obey and just not cause any trouble. Fuck that slave shit. What the hell is wrong with you? We're not going to get anywhere with that slave shit. Stop listening to these people. Um, you need to understand that they don't give a fuck about you. They will shoot you. Don't set yourself up to think that you're special, that, oh, the system cares about you, that you can just put yourself out as a human shield and nothing's going to happen. They will fucking kill you like a fucking rabid dog. I don't think that we agree on what is right and wrong, because a lot of them think that disobeying the system is wrong no matter what. They have they have accepted abject slavery. They don't think that we have any right to resist, and I'm not sure where they fucking draw the line, because it really, there's no line where you shouldn't resist. You should not flee. Even if someone has a gun to your head, you should just basically stand there and let them fucking pull the trigger. These people make no fucking sense. Well, I'm streaming on both channels, so I was talking about, the people who are here now. They may not know that I'm an anarchist. So, um, I don't know. I don't know that this is just MAGA. Like, what I want everybody to understand, that this isn't just MAGA. This isn't the left. This isn't the right. It's the master state in its totality. That anybody who supports democracy, you're supporting violence. You don't get to just say, "Oh, I support violence when it comes to certain situations, but I don't support that type of violence." No, you support the system itself. So whether you, excuse me, whether you supported this specific case of violence is completely of no consequence. Like, you support the system, you support violence on a daily basis that you don't even see. You support people getting pulled over by road pirates at gunpoint. You support occupational licenses. You support people having their property taken away through the threat of violence. You support all this shit. 1984, at the end, when Winston finds out the boss that the right answer is, however many fingers the party says is holding up. Yeah, this is a dystopian nightmare. But unfortunately, this nightmare has been a reality for many of us. But a lot of people just didn't give a shit. They had their heads in the sand, basically saying that this was a personal grievance. This was solipsistic, right? This is what that attorney said to me. This was a personal grievance. That everything, all the citations I had in my book were basically a figment of my imagination. They all stem from the fact that my father disinherited me. It had nothing to do with systemic violence. This was all something that I just fucking made up because I was angry at my father. Right. So yeah, I just want you guys to really, I want you guys to look at things objectively. Don't listen to what the media says. Like, basically, look at the fucking video for yourself. Turn the fucking TV off, because of course they're going to spin shit, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. This is the system that you're putting your children in. This is a system, like, they don't give a shit. They're not going to do anything. It's every man for himself. Nobody's going to come to your fucking aid. So if you can form a private militia, if you can form your own society for your own protection, great. That's what the whole Second Amendment for is. The Second Amendment was never about, it wasn't primarily about private citizens owning guns. It was about the right to form militias. Like, we didn't have a standing army, we didn't have a standing police force. And so forming a private militia was your first line of defense. So that is that's going to be your own protection. Don't rely on the master state to protect you. It's not. Um, they're about to start a fucking civil war because, well, at least at the state and local level, they might actually care about people. They may actually care about their citizens, and they're not going to stand by and let these federal thugs come in and just kill people, um, executioner style, without a jury, without a charge. You don't get to just do that. So a lot of these local officials are going to stand. I'm not going to get my hopes up. I don't think it's going to be enough. There's not going to be an actual civil war, because it's like, who has the bigger guns? The federal government has bigger guns. So ultimately, they're going to lose. Um, there is no fucking solution. You can try to resist, but at the end of the day, it's only going to delay the inevitable. They're going to dominate. They're going to win. There's nothing you can do at this point. It's too fucking powerful. Um, I wish I could give some positive spin to this. I can't think of any way to look at this from the bright side. All right, y'all. That's my rant. I just I didn't really want to let too much time get away without me following up. Um, don't just pay attention to what the officers did. Pay attention to the public's reaction to it, how they support it. They don't give a shit about her. They don't have any empathy for her, and so you think they're going to have any empathy for you when something happens? They don't. They don't give a shit. What they're going to do is rationalize state violence and talk about how it's your fault. This is what they always fucking do. So with that